This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the best way to make an amazing website. In this video, not only are we going to compare iPadOS 14 versus 15 real-world performance, we're also going to see if Apple fixed a few important issues with the M1 iPad's Thunderbolt connector. For example, we have super fast SSDs that are much slower on the M1 iPads than the MacBooks, both having the same Thunderbolt ports, so hopefully they fix that. We're also going to do other tests, such as multitasking RAM stress tests with both running iPadOS 15. We have 8 gigs on one iPad Pro, 16 on the other, to see if Apple fixed the 5 GB RAM limitation that was imposed, which was very interesting. Hopefully they fixed that. But we're also going to see how the battery life compares between both these. I have both at 100% right now. We're gonna go ahead and unplug them. Now, the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm going to go ahead and clear out everything from our memory, and then we are gonna do a fresh restart. Wow, okay, so about a second faster there. We have nothing loaded into the RAM, and the first thing that I wanna do is run Geekbench 5. As you guys can see, we have 8 gigs of RAM on the one with iPadOS 15, 16 with 14, but as we saw previously, that didn't make any sort of difference. Actually, 8 gig was a little bit faster. So let's go ahead and start out. We will run our CPU test. So it looks like the performance is about the same, nothing changed. That's actually good for people that are using the beta. Sometimes the performance could get worse. In this case, it is the same. Let's go ahead and run a quick compute benchmark, testing out the graphics. And it looks like the graphics performance is also almost identical. So let's go ahead and close down our Geekbench 5. The last benchmark I wanna do is the Wildlife Extreme benchmark, which is gonna max out the graphics card. We're gonna see if there's any frequency differences, and it also pushes the battery to see if we're gonna have any differences between them. And then we'll move on to real world performance. Alrighty, and look at that. We are seeing some differences in performance. Here we have 10% better than all other scores, which I don't know what this is showing up here with insane scores. That doesn't seem right. This one's 13%. But overall, we have 28.6 frames per second compared to 29.1. Now, we also are seeing a battery difference already. Here we're at 95% battery compared to 97, but we're just at the start. We're gonna have to wait till later to see if that difference actually grows or closes down. Now, before we test the real world performance differences, let me give a shout out to the sponsor of this video, Squarespace. If you've been thinking about upgrading or making a new website, Squarespace is seriously the best way to go. You can make a great looking website like we did with literally no web making experience. And it doesn't matter if you want a portfolio, a blog, e-commerce, or anything else, you just choose from one of their great templates and customize blocks of text and images. It's incredibly simple, it's affordable, and ours have been running flawlessly for years now, bringing in tons of traffic thanks to its built-in SEO tools. Start your free 2-week trial with no credit card needed by going to squarespace.com/maxtech or by using the custom link down below. And when you're ready to launch, you can save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. So now let us get into the first real world test. I'm gonna connect my Sabrent SSD. If you saw our iPad comparison to the MacBook Pro, it took way longer to transfer on the iPad, and with that, it also couldn't transfer all the files, which was really weird. Let's see if it's actually gonna work this time, and nope, look at that. It cannot work because it can't communicate with the helper application. Let's go ahead and close all of this just to make sure we don't get any corruption. We're gonna unplug it and plug it into the iPadOS 15 version, and I really hope that this was fixed. All right, look at that. Thank you, Apple. You fixed something, another thing with iPadOS 15, thankfully. We're gonna redo that transfer test, which took much longer on the iPad. So it looks like, unfortunately, even though I closed the Files app before unplugging the SSD, it still corrupted it, and it will not mount no matter what I do. Hopefully this is just an issue with iPadOS 14 and it doesn't happen with 15. I'm gonna go get my Mac. I have to run the first aid on there. It takes about 10 minutes to fix it, and then I can get back to testing. Bam, it showed up, thankfully. Let's transfer that same file like we did before. Bam, just got done there. Took exactly 1 minute to transfer that 16 gig file. Plugging into iPadOS 15. All right, why is it not showing up? We seriously cleared out the Files app. All right, this is getting to be ridiculous. I've never had this issue on my Macs. Hopefully it's just iPadOS 14, and I will talk about this in my review if I do still have this issue with the new iPadOS. All right, let's grab that same file now that the drive is done. This time we actually have a progress bar here. And it looks like based on the estimate, it still is not running at the proper speed, even with iPadOS 15. Bam, that's exact same time, 1 minute for iPadOS 15, and macOS is close to 3 times faster, as you guys can see by this graph. Next, we're gonna test out video rendering in Adobe Premiere Rush. When we first got the M1 iPads, it was actually slower than the 2020 iPad Pro, which is very interesting. So let's go ahead and open up this project here. And now let's export them. This is high quality 4K footage from Sony cameras in a 4K project set to high. Bam. All right, guys, look at that. It took 2 minutes and 46 seconds with iPadOS 14, and the A12Z took 2 minutes and 31 seconds. But with iPadOS 15, it took 2 minutes and 10 seconds, a big improvement. That is 28% faster with iPadOS 15. That is fantastic. Still not that much faster than the 2020 model, but let's go ahead and open up Lightroom Mobile right here. We have 42 megapixel raw images. They are stored locally. All of these have a ton of color corrections applied. Let's go ahead and export these. Looks like 14 was faster just by a little bit. Looks like by 8 seconds. We have 3 minutes over here and 3 minutes and 8 seconds with iPadOS 15. So why do we have that difference? Well, maybe it's because with photo editing, it's mostly based on CPU with a little bit of graphics compared to video where it's the opposite, mostly graphics heavy. Or it could also be the fact that this one has 8 gigs of RAM compared to 16. Now what I'm gonna do is upgrade this 16 gigabyte model to iOS 15 as well, and we're gonna get into our RAM test. And right before that, check it out, we have 83% battery life with iPadOS 14 compared to 80% with iPadOS 15. So a very small difference there, a little bit more drainage with iPadOS 15, at least the first beta version. All right, guys, both are on iPadOS 15, and we are gonna do the ultimate RAM comparison now that both are updated. And what I'm really curious about, does 16 gig make it any faster if you're using pro apps? And I have the ultimate test that I've never seen anybody do before. I also have an app that I've never seen anybody use. And we are gonna find out if Apple got rid of that 5 gig limit, and developers are actually limited. They wanna be able to use more with the new M1 as 8 or 16 gigs of RAM, but they were capped, which is interesting. So hopefully Apple fixed that. We'll find out if they did. Let's go ahead and get started. As a reminder, I have the 8 gigabyte version on the right-hand side and the 16 gigabyte version on the left-hand side. So I just opened up 20 basic apps, things that just stay open in the background when you use it. I don't know if you guys saw that. This took a lot longer to open up the Apple Store than the 16 gigabyte model did. I don't know if that's just the Wi-Fi or maybe we had to wait for an app to get removed before doing so. So let's just go ahead and open up our apps right here, and let me go back to the oldest one to see if it remained open on the 8 gigabyte before we do any actual performance tests. So let's go ahead and open up Photos. Nope, as you guys could see, Photos stayed open. Maps has a lot of info. Let's try Maps. Nope, still open. Now I was wondering if there's a way to see how much of the RAM is actually being filled up, and check this out, guys. There's actually an app on the App Store that could show you. It's called Smart Memory right there. And just to show you guys, I have all of these apps opened up right here. So let's go ahead and see how much RAM is being used. Bam, look at that. We have 92% filled up on the 8 gig version. So you actually get 7.2 gigs, not 8 because of formatting. But it looks like we're using 5.5 gigs of active compared to 8 on here, meaning that even though here we're not filled up on RAM all the way, we have another almost 5 gigs available. We have all this available. The 8 gig model is using more RAM, meaning that some of these apps that are here, they are completely loaded up here, whereas on the iPad, they might be in a half state or something like that, or it might be loading it up fresh from the memory. But when we saw earlier, it loaded up extremely quickly. I didn't notice the difference. So let's see, what other app is very difficult to load up? So far, none of these are too difficult. Let's do Stocks, for example. Okay, Stocks loaded up really quickly there. Podcasts. Okay, that's very interesting that they're loading up at the same time where actual used RAM is showing up as 5.6 gigs compared to 8.4. Maybe it's something else with the system, I'm not sure, but we haven't even pushed these that hard yet. So let's go ahead and open up some more applications. This time we're gonna do more difficult ones. How about we do iMovie, and I'm gonna actually go into a project here. You can go ahead and scrub around, get some of this stuff loaded up. All right, and then let's go ahead and open up Adobe Lightroom. We know this is a big application, professional application. I'll go ahead and switch through some of these 42 megapixel raw images that have a bunch of effects. And as you guys could see, these are identical, both extremely fast performance, and these are actually stored locally. These are not little proxy files. This is quicker than on my MacBook. All right, now let's open up Photoshop. Let's open up this Adobe stock image. This is a really high quality file. Geez, it's just so responsive. Next, let's open up Adobe Premiere Rush, and let's grab this project right here. All right, so far, still fairly smooth. This also has effects loaded onto it. Let's close that. Of course, we have to open up YouTube because, well, we're YouTubers. We love YouTube. We'll watch a lot of it. Let's play the best song in the world. You guys already know it. It's a classic here at Max Tech. And with YouTube Premium, we're gonna close this. It's gonna continue playing the audio in the background, which is important. And before we run an actual performance test with the RAM loaded up, let's do one final app. We'll open up Genshin Impact. That is just crazy difficult. I mean, it pushes these tablets, any machines, to their limits, actually any tablet or phone to their limits. And now I'm gonna go ahead and open up LumaFusion, where we have a project opened up that we are going to export. This is another difficult project. We have different effects loaded up on here. We have a different slow motion for 4K, and we have some retiming to speed things up. Before we export that, let's open up our memory app once again and check that out, guys. The 16 gig actually has more used, 95.5% compared to 93.78 of the 8 gigs. So the 8 gig is definitely doing something in the background to allow all these apps to still stay there or partially stay there. We'll be checking that out in a bit. So both of these are completely maxed out right now. We're gonna go ahead and export these to our Files app. We have the same exact high quality 4K settings here. Let's hit export. They pretty much ended at the same exact time, no difference. I didn't hit the timer fast enough, but that was faster than 55 seconds. I'm gonna go ahead and just leave it like this. So the file is just sitting there waiting to be told where to be saved. So I'm gonna leave that right there. And how about right now, before we do the next export, I wanna do Adobe Rush, because as you guys saw earlier, it was a lot faster, 28% faster with iPadOS 15 than with 14. But let me go ahead and open up Chrome here, and let's get some tabs open, and look at that. Did you guys see that? It actually had that saved from our last time we did this video. I don't know if that was a week ago, week and a half ago. All these tabs are saved. Of course, they're not preloaded in there, but we have some video ads that are auto playing. Let's go to here. That's actually kind of cool how it shows it in black and white first until it loads it. To allow it to load. Let's go to the next page. It's almost like a screenshot just to show you what that was. Get our next tab loaded. All right, there we go. How about we jump into Safari as well? We have the weather channel here, still loaded, no issues there. IGN usually takes a good amount of room. They have so much different content on here. And how about I load up about 10 more tabs here? So we have Call of Duty Mobile also loaded up just for good measure here. Let's go ahead and go back to Lightroom over here. Everything's still loaded up, that is great. And how about we go ahead and export all 50 of these images? And I also have one very interesting, very tough test that's really gonna answer this question once and for all, if 16 gigabytes is worth it now that we have iPadOS 15. So after that, we're gonna run that test. Look at that, guys. The performance is still exactly the same. So I'm not seeing any difference. It's crazy how fluid and how responsive iPadOS is, even with all of that loaded up in the background. All right, guys, no difference there at all. That is mind-blowing. All right, so now let's just put this to the final test. I have Lightroom opened up right here. I'm also gonna go ahead and open up Adobe Rush. Bam, did you guys see that actually? Adobe Rush had to be reopened whereas on the 16 gig, it didn't. All right, this is gonna be the final test as far as performance. So we know now that if you have a ton of apps open, multiple high-end games, multiple professional applications, you export 4K video, you export high-quality professional photos right after that, then you go into another video editing app. It does have to be reloaded. It did load pretty quickly though in Premiere Rush. So yes, we are finally seeing some difference. We didn't before iPadOS 15, but I wanna put this to the final test as far as performance. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab Premiere Rush. We are going to load it side by side with Lightroom. Oh, do you guys hear that? Or at least maybe not hear that? Both iPads actually closed down YouTube, or at least they paused it or saved it, because the video stopped playing as soon as I went into multitasking on both of these. So that was about equal. Now, at this point, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and select all these 50 images. I'm gonna export these. We're gonna get started there. Now let's resize this, and then we are going to grab this project here, and let's go ahead and export this as well. Bam. All right, guys, this is the ultimate test. Does extra RAM give you extra performance? We saw in video editing it didn't. Even with all those apps and games in the background, we saw in photo editing it didn't. How about if we're exporting both photos and video at the same time? The toughest thing you could throw on a tablet like this. It is definitely taking longer than before, and our video editing just got finished up. Oh, okay. I did not expect that part of it to happen. Let's wait just for these photos to finish up. That's taking a little bit longer. Bam, one of them just got finished up. Let's wait for the other one. And bam, we are done. So the final results are the 16 gig model took 4 minutes and 48 seconds total. In the 8 gigabyte model, that one took 5 minutes to export. So yes, it did take longer by a whole 12 seconds. Honestly, I have to say I was expecting a bigger difference than that. It's good to see that Premiere Rush stayed open with all those other apps open, but it only took a couple seconds to reload. But as far as actual performance, this is the toughest thing I think I could throw at it, especially on desktop. Use a lot of RAM, Lightroom uses a lot of RAM. We definitely know RAM helps, but with iPadOS, we're not seeing any difference. Now, what that really makes me wonder is, did Apple remove that 5 gigabyte RAM limit like we had with iPadOS 14? I know some developers were complaining about that. They said they want to give more performance to their users, but they can't because it's limited to 5 gigs of usage per app. Now, I understand when the iPads were, they only had up to 6 or maybe 8. I think 6 was the top. You're limited to 5. They want a 1 gig cushion for other background stuff. But in this case, we have 8 and we have 16. So let me go ahead and do some research. All right, guys, so I did find a developer online that said that 5 gig limit is still there. So apps cannot go any faster. They cannot use any more. So if you have 16 gigs, you can't just give each one 8 gigs or 7 gigs, or give one up to 8 and the other one can have less, have it use as much as it wants, but raise that cap. It would make sense to at least raise it till set to 7, since this one has 8 gigs, or maybe if you have a 16 gig model, allow it to go higher, but it's still limited exactly the same to when we had 6 gigs of RAM on our iPad Pros last year. So I guess the only real benefit of having that extra RAM that you're forced to pay for is just having extra apps not close themselves off in the background. So how about we do that? That's gonna be the final test. Let's see if YouTube reopens. Bam, YouTube is still open on both. Like I said, it did pause automatically when I went to do that. How about we go and take a look at Call of Duty? All right, both were open. Let's do LumaFusion. Check that out. Still open on the 16 gig. Took us a couple seconds to reload it on the 8 gig model, but actually reloaded right back to where we were at, almost like it saved it to the SSD or to the memory. Let me open up Smart Memory here. We actually aren't using up all the 8 gigs at this point. We are using 3.45, so we still have 800 free, where here we have 2.5 gigabytes free. How about the next thing we'll open up is Photoshop. In the first time I did this video with both using iPadOS 14, the 16 gig actually closed Photoshop where the 8 gig didn't. Let's see what happens now. Wow, both of them are actually open. So I decided to keep Photoshop open, but not LumaFusion. How about Genshin Impact? This is a huge game, just like I expected. Still open on 16. We have to reload on the 8 gig model. And this game does take a while to load, so that is where it's nice to be able to just jump right back in. Let's check out iMovie. Wow, actually on both. How about our Photos app, Maps? Reloaded on both. I don't know if you guys saw that. Let's jump back into Safari. All right, guys, did you see that? Safari actually has to reload this page here, where on the 16 gig model, it did not. Let's take a look at some of these other pages. Oh, Amazon did have to reload. Let's check out a TV app. Open on both. Apple Store. It looks like the Apple apps stay open. I don't know if that's just by design because Apple wants them to stay open or what, but let's check out the App Store. It looks like both of them reloaded there. And let's open up Chrome. Okay. Looks like Chrome might have stayed open. Oh, this one just had to reload, or it's just extremely fast at reloading certain things. There you go, guys. You can see a couple of these tabs did have to reload, but it is incredibly quick how fast things reload, other than Genshin Impact, which takes about 4 or 5 seconds. And then now let's just go back to the ultimate craziest one just for the finale here. Where's our 4K professional video editing and the raw photo editing at the same time right here? Bam, look at that. You got 2 pro apps. I mean, Adobe Rush, it's not really pro to edit, but it does give you full high quality video, which that part of it, the processing and exporting is pro. You saw it stayed open here, where here we had to reload both of them. And in this case, this is still ready to save because I actually didn't save these files. Maybe the result would be different if I saved them. They're literally sitting there in the RAM ready to save, which actually probably made the whole multitasking thing different because it takes a lot more room with that file just sitting there, not being saved to storage, taking up RAM. But like I said, that was the ultimate stress test for RAM. I've never seen anybody do it this difficult, pushing 8 gigs and 16 to the limit. As far as performance, barely any difference. No difference unless you're exporting 2 pro apps at once, photo and video, 4K and 42 megapixel raw. And even then the difference was 12 seconds. And the biggest difference you'll see is if you're going this extreme, yes, the 16 gig will keep some things open. But as far as that 5 gig RAM limit, Apple has not changed it. And performance from iPadOS 14 to 15, yes, it definitely got better in certain things. But as far as transferring with our SSD, that is still slow, still way slower than the MacBook Pro, which is quite unfortunate. But at least we do have some of those improvements, and some of the folders that just straight up wouldn't transfer are now transferring. That is good. So thank you guys for watching. If you guys want to see the full review of these new M1 iPad Pros with all the info that we gathered, our personal thoughts, make sure you click that circle above to subscribe, and that way you'll help us reach 1 million subscribers before the end of the year. That'd be amazing. Check out one of those videos over there. This has been Max, and I'll see you in the next video.